Okay, let me welcome everyone present and the viewing and listening public to this, our 34th meeting of the Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure. I'd like to advise that this meeting is being broadcasted live on the Parliament's Channel 11, Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, PALView. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Demerits, and it is my honor to be chairing this committee. And I'd like to invite my committee members to introduce themselves at this time.
Lisa Morris-Julian, Vice Chairman.
Dr. Abraham, member.
Okay, thank you very much, members. The purpose of our meeting today is to commence the committee's first public hearing pursuant to our examination of the Demerit point system in Trinidad and Tobago with officials from the Ministry of Works and Transport and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And just to remind everyone and our viewing audience and listening audience that the objectives of our inquiry are fourfold, the main objectives. One is to assess the regulatory and institutional framework that governs the demerit point system. Two, to assess the effectiveness of the demerit point system in monitoring, tracking, and improving the road behavior of motorists. Three, to examine the enforcement of the demerit point system. And four, to understand the challenges faced in relation to the administration and operation of the demerit point system. I'd like to ask for the entities we have here today with us to ask for introductions by each entity, and following the introduction, brief opening remarks from the chief official present for the respective entity. So we can start with the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Good afternoon, members, chairman, members, viewing public. My name is Sonia Francis Yearwood. I'm the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport.
Special good afternoon, Chair, and members. I'm Clive Clark, Transport Commissioner, Ministry of Works and Transport.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neville Sanka, the Chief Traffic Warden.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Adandi Pigot, Chief Traffic Engineer.
Good afternoon to everyone. Ayana Humphreys, Senior Legal Officer.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dahanmati Ramdat.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Amo Sylvester, Acting Superintendent, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Acting ASP Lal, Court and Process, TTPS.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon to all members present, as well as the viewing public. I am Brent Batson. I'm the coordinator of the Police Strategic Road Safety Project.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Mrs. Ramdat, would you like to give your title? Did you?
I'm sorry, Chair. I'm Traffic Enforcement Coordinator.
Okay, thank you. So thanks to everyone. I'll now ask our Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure. The Ministry of Works and Transport wishes to thank the committee for its invitation to attend today's meeting on the examination of the demerit point system in Trinidad and Tobago. The Ministry views itself as being part of the stakeholder grouping with responsibility for the continued development and implementation of traffic law enforcement measures and strategies for the regulation of road use and promotion of road safety in Trinidad and Tobago. The Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act was amended in 2017 and enacted in 2020 to introduce a current demerit point system. This brought representatives from the Judiciary, Ministry of Works and Transport, Office of the Attorney General, and Ministry of Legal Affairs, Trinidad and Tobago, Police Service, TT Post, and other stakeholders, inclusive of the motoring public, into a collaborative working relationship. Major objectives of the system are to encourage and promote safety on the nation's road network, to improve the standard of driving in Trinidad and Tobago and thereby reduce incidents of road traffic accidents and fatalities, to detect repeat traffic offenders and reform delinquent drivers through enrollment in a rehabilitative driving program. The system is viewed as in its formative stages with a number of outlier impacting forces. As such, the Ministry has sought to undertake biannual review of the technological, administrative, and implementing realities of the system in order to take necessary steps to ensure efficiency of operation and fairness of process. In this context, the Ministry of Works and Transport is ready and willing to answer any questions to the best of our ability posed by the committee in order to advance the operation of the system. Mr. Chairman, I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Yearwood. We go now to the senior official representing the TTPS here. That would be the Assistant Superintendent, Lal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Acting Superintendent Amo Sylvester. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service thanks you for the invitation to appear before this panel to be a part of the discussion on the demerit point system, and we look forward to a productive session this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So first we'd could probably we are opening the floor to questions by members of the committee. And I think the first couple of questions we'll be looking at directing them towards more the Ministry of Works and Transport, and then we get to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Come back. So it'll be a to and fro. You know, we're not dealing with one entity totally, and then, you know, it would be a mixture. So just to start off the discussion to the Ministry of Works and Transport, in response to the first question that we had sent to you all, that is in response to question 1, which is on page 2, the third paragraph on page 2. You went into some detail in terms of the thresholds for the respective demerit point system. The question, just a lot too for the viewing and listening public, is how was the threshold of the demerit points for newly licensed drivers and experienced drivers determined? What were the main considerations in coming up with these thresholds?
Thank you, Chair. In coming up with the system as a whole, the Ministry legal team would have done comparative analysis with a number of other Commonwealth countries that also have this particular system in place. I believe it included Canada, Australia, yes, and the UK. And it was based on that, that research where they would have done initial research on some of the factors and the age groupings and the amount of points that would reach the threshold levels. But if you would like to get the detailed research, we can submit that to you, Chair.
Yeah, I think the committee would appreciate that. Okay, so roughly guidelines from existing jurisdictions.
Yes, yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. In terms of what we started off with, there was a revision to the point system at a time. What were the motivating factors behind that change?
Chair, there was a review based after the second year of operation, to look at the infractions and to identify some of the underlying issues. So that review would have been undertaken with the the Traffic Enforcement Center staff, as well as the Transport Division and enforcement officers. They would have also engaged with external entities such as the TTPS, and they would have identified certain areas due to our particular circumstances that may have warranted either a decrease or increase. In the first instance, it was a decrease in some of the areas. Would you like to? I'll just let the Transport Commissioner give you a bit of detail.
Thank you very much, PS. We just need to be mindful, though, that the change in the demerit point systems, I think we had 2 instances of those. One, and my legal is here to correct me, I think one in 2022 and one in 2024, where we would have amended some of the points on the ninth schedule. The question, though, is what would have prompted us, and the PS would have articulated such. But in addition to that, we continue to look at the statistics generated from the U-turn system to guide some of our decisions and the instances we as enforcement officers would have faced on the nation's road. I could run through in just less than a minute where the changes took place, because just for the listening audience, in 2024, we would have, I'll go through it in the order of the demerit points of the ninth schedule. So in 2024, we amended the traffic signs from 1,000 on the fixed penalty fee to 500, and the demerit points changed from 3 to 2. Breach of a traffic order made by the minister, that in itself was also amended to the fixed penalty from $1,000 to $500, and demerit points to 2 in 2024. Similarly, failing to comply with traffic sign, and if you recognize most of those offenses, they have to do with traffic signs, was changed from $1,000 to $500, and demerit points of 2. In 2024, again, we also changed the contravention of the traffic order made by the Commissioner of Police from $1,000 to $500 to demerit points of 2. Similarly, for breach of parking and restrictions made by the minister, same adjustments, $1,000 to $500 to 2 demerit points. Standing for hire to place not appointed for the purpose, we had the alteration there from $750 to 2 demerit points, and the face of a defective identification plate from 450, we simply changed the demerit points there from 3 to 2. No identification lights on the illumination of the identification mark of the vehicle, and that's the number plate. We moved the demerit point from 2 to 0, but the fine remained as $300, and that was done in 2022. In 2024, we amended vehicle without silencers or fitted with cutouts. Amended the demerit points was changed from 3 to 2. Vehicle with defective fittings, we we amended the demerit points from 2 to 0. The fine remained the same as $450. And to produce a vehicle for inspection, that also was changed to 6 demerit points. I must, however, point out here that on the time of implementation of the inspection system, the demerit point was already changed to 6 because that was done in 2022. Similarly, vehicle without headlamps went from 2 demerit points to 0 in 2022. Vehicle without park lights from 3 demerit points to 0 in 2022. Similarly, vehicle without tail lights from 3 demerit points to 0 in 2022, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, it seems to me that there's been a downward trend in the points and also hoping, well, the charges, the fixed penalties have been reduced for a number of items. I didn't get the clarity, but for the listening public and us here, can we realize or find out what exactly fueled these changes? Was it on the end user aspect who objected to the amount of points? Was it because they challenged the points? Were they unable to pay fees? Or was it that persons with points, so it were accumulating way too quickly, approaching the mark of 10? Somewhere along the line there, to reduce those points and fixed penalty charges, there must have been some level of feedback. Now, you didn't mention one internal unit, but just explain for us, where is the need for the reduction coming from? Where did that come from?
My apologies. Let me, I recall when conducting enforcement, there are certain situations that it is difficult for one to project. For example, you may stop someone and discover that the light may not be working on the vehicle, right? And therefore, that in itself may have carried 3 demerit points to 2. I can't recall the exact figure. I have to go back to the area. And a certain punitive fine, right? And that is something that, that while we know having a light, a non-functioning light could be a problem, sometimes it can happen on the basis that the driver, the owner of the vehicle, may not be aware. And therefore, we find it a bit necessary that at least we should remove the demerit points from that, because it doesn't really impact behavior. But basically, it's an instant that a piece of instrument or device on the vehicle may not be functioning. That was some of the factors we look at, some of those offenses. So we'll see similar things for like the park light, the brake light, and that sort of thing, where we remove those. So that was part of a contributing factor to some of them. Probably other members of my panel may share some additional light.
Anybody would add to what Transport Commissioner is saying?
Sure, sir.
Yes.
From the police operation perspective, I just want to support the TC. When we are engaging, for example, with heavy goods transport trucks, tractor trailers, remember a lot of them have HSC requirements, and they would actually produce check sheets showing that before they left their base, these things were working, and then having sometimes gone through some rough roads, for want of a better pace as possible, there are wire disconnected and stuff like that. And therefore, they were being penalized sometimes for a situation that they had no control over really at that point. So even meetings sometimes with the Haulers Association that were finding it where some of their best drivers, and I want to be clear on that, their best drivers could end up losing their permits for small things. You know, it was some of the feedback that came into the system as well when we'd have meetings with the Ministry of Works.
Thank you. Anything to add on this point?
Just to say, Chair, that as Member Ibrahim mentioned, we did have internal, but we also did have external stakeholder meetings coming out of implementation, and also the feedback coming out of enforcement. So we would get these instances constantly that, listen, this did not happen on purpose. It was an in transit, etc. And as the TC just, my apologies, as the Transport Commissioner just said, that does not really impact behavior because it's not a willful act. So, the purpose of this system is really seeking to impact behavior, not to be punitive, but to impact behavior. So, and there was also, you did indicate the majority of them may have been reduction, but there was also an instance of increase, once again, because of the question of seeking to impact behavior. We recently introduced the disabled parking system, and that now does carry.
Chair, if I may, just as a follow-up, as an additional question to what I just asked, with the reduction, so that was a 2022 or 2024 reduction. Previous to 2022, if individuals did get the 3 points, are their records adjusted downwards?
No, it is not. The law at the time that you would have committed the violation would apply. So if at the time it attracted demerit points of 3, you continue to have those 3 points applied to your driving permit record.
And lastly on this question, the reduction of the fixed penalty and the removal of any points, it is met with what from the enforcement side about it? Is met with a warning on record, a verbal warning, a letter, a notice? How does that come up on either the drivers or the haulers' fleet? And how does it impact the driver?
Thank you very much, member. Let me just say, though, while the demerit points, as I mentioned a while ago, some of them we may have lowered some of them. We need to keep in mind the fine still exists as a punitive measure there. So obviously the officer has the discretion to issue that fixed penalty notice. In addition to that, warning is not something that is really legislated in the act for us. That is based on really an administrative component that comes with the system we use, or the tool or the software we now use to issue tickets. We normally use the term fixed penalty notice. So what we do sometimes is that we issue a warning so we can now document it to build a profile. So in the event someone is stopped, we can now see this person now carries an history. But it doesn't carry any punitive measure that after 3 warning we can now do this, etc. It's an internal arrangement among enforcement officers.
Member Morris-Julian.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, this question through you will be for the PS. And of course, the Commissioner can always jump in if he wishes, as can you, Mr. Sanka. I noticed, Madam PS, you spoke about the information being out there and it changing to suit. It was never meant to be a way that we penalize drivers so much as a learning process, correct? Meaning that we want them to do better. Because I would have noticed that there was a reduction, but we heard nothing. There was no applause, nobody acknowledged it, nothing like the hue and cry when you implemented the demerit point system. So, on behalf of the drivers and my family, I would like to say thank you. But I am concerned about the mechanisms that were put in place to ensure public education on the DPS prior to the implementation. Now, I would have been privy to, having been invited to the various outreach, but if we could just get some more detail on that, please, Madam PS.
Okay. Thank you, Member. So we would have started the outreach approximately a year before the system was actually implemented. And We had a concerted campaign a year prior to its implementation, both all medias, print, television, social media, etc., leading up to the implementation. We, as you rightly said, on Ascent, we also made a major thrust in terms of putting the information out to the general public. And we continue with that program. We implemented as well a site, a dedicated site, I think it was Driving TT. Yes, a dedicated site with information that all and sundry could access. Up to today, we still, on different exercises, when enforcement officers go out, we still take with us different pamphlets, and to continue to try to educate the general public as to what is happening. In addition, under the Trinidad and Tobago National Road Safety Council, we have in its infancy stage a public education campaign to go to schools. And that, a major part of that is it would be the education on the demerit point system, in addition to other road safety measures, initiatives, etc. We would ideally love, can I make a plug here, Chair?
Please do.
We would ideally love to have, Member Julian, driver's education system as part of, driver's ed as part of the education curriculum. But we know that that is it's a process. You know, there are a number of things that would have to be put in place. But I'm saying all that to say that we have really taken the dissemination of this information as far and as wide as we possibly can, and we're continuing to push information on our social media pages, and just seeking to ensure that the public understands and know what it is we are trying to achieve, because we understand how close to home this hits everyone in so many different spheres. Yes, and I just wanted to just mention one thing, Member Ibrahim. While it is, yes, the points would stay on if you had it before, but as a member of the public, if you are stopped and you're given a ticket for an infraction that has points that you believe that there was some mitigating circumstance, you do have the option to contest it.
Okay, so the members were trying to make sure that we understand it, that the points are not expunged from the records. They remain there.
Based on the change in the legislation?
Yeah.
No, the points would not be expunged based on the change in legislation. The points would be expunged if after a certain period you do not gain any more points, then everything is expunged. That's one. And if before the points are finalized, you have an opportunity to contest it. You can indicate that you contest the rationale under which the points were given, and you are given a period in time to address it. But I know the Transport Commissioner has a point.
Chair, I really want to capitalize on the opportunity to say something regarding the communication aspect of the U-turn system, because as Commissioner, I recognize from certain road initiative a number of for new drivers, for some reason, weren't aware of the demerit points and how it works, what is the threshold, what are the implications. And we have taken the steps, and we have since implemented a change in the Class 3 regulations. That's a written exam that all of us would have done when we came in, because I discovered for over 30 years that exam remained constant. And we took the opportunity to make changes there. So the new driver who comes in to do Class 3, the curriculum provide the opportunity for them to study and know basic things about the demerit point system, and they are examined on it as part of the theory being issued a driver's permit for Class 3. So and I think though I have also seen during our operations that persons may call and write and ask questions like they are not aware that when I pay for a ticket, when I pay a fine, my demerit points remain on my system, on the system, and so on. So I recognize there have been some issues with persons not understanding the demerit point system. So we are attempted to address some of those things there. I know we are going on the realm of expunge and so forth, so I will probably want to hand over that to legal.
Through you, Chairman, just to wrap up the communication aspect of this particular. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people do not know. So it's something that we need to stress over and over again. And Madam PS, you also brought up the brochures, but there's nothing scarier than a policeman or a licensing officer coming to a piece of paper to hand it to you in the car. Are we going to put this information in other public offices, other government offices, the MP's office, for example? Is that something we can entertain?
Definitely, member. I recall that in the period leading up, we did send out information to a number of different entities. But what I hear you saying is on a continual basis, we can seek to address that.
And for example, we were looking at the PSTC, ARIMA, Port of Spain, the water taxis, and we're just hoping that if this information is out there, it'll be far more effective. As the Transport Commissioner pointed out, our new drivers don't seem to quite understand the demerit point system, while the rest may have been privileged enough to basically be there from the beginning and see the evolution. So, and regards, Chairman, to the Ministry of Education, we will be more than happy to accommodate. So we'll hope for the new year we have some sort of, all right, thank you.
Chair, I just wanted to get a clarification from the Transport Commissioner. You said Class 3 examinations. Is the Class 3 examinations the same as what the 18-year-old driver, 17-year-old driver do for the first time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
yes.
what we call passing regs?
Yes, most times
it's contained in the curriculum.
Yes, most times it's the first driving license or permit someone may visit the licensing authority for.
Before we move off, just one thing on this expunge. So, say if 10 years from now, after somebody has served the disqualification period of 1 year, and you go back to that person's record, are you going to see the DPS, the historical aspect of the whole thing for that particular driver? Or is it wiped clean?
I think there's going to be a bit of a two-part answer to that in terms of internally and in the system that supports the demerit points system. The internal users may be able to see the full history of a person's demerit points. But as far as the legislation is concerned, demerit points accumulated within a 3-year period is what you look at for the purposes of disqualification. So that after that 3-year period, the demerit points are not counted towards disqualification. In that sense, you can think of it as being expunged 3 years after first accumulated. Apart from that, under Section 88O, if you accumulate demerit points, and then for a period of 2 continuous years, you do not accumulate any additional demerit points, those points are expunged from your record.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
If I may, just as how we have different parameters for new drivers and experienced drivers, would it weigh heavier on an individual who repeats the same offense, having had their license suspended for a period of time? Would it weigh heavier on them if they repeat it, having had that historical points not on the system anymore? And I would like to also ask that the period of time, I've just heard two statements. One was accumulated points within a 3-year period for the disqualification, and then I heard another time frame of 2 years, no more points being added on. Then there's a somewhat of a reset. The different offenses have different time frames of coming off.
The short answer to the second question is no. There are no different time periods. What happens is the time would run from the time that the demerit points are applied to your record. So if today, for instance, you commit a violation and you accumulate 3 demerit points, time starts to run from today. If for 2 continuous years and we get to 2025, 2026, and you have no additional points, those points are expunged by virtue of 88O. If, however, next week or in January 2025, you accumulate a second set of demerit points, you count 3 years, basically from each time that points are applied to your record. And that's simply because 88M2 says that you look at the demerit points accumulated within a 3-year period. The first question had to do with whether it would weigh heavier for repeat offenders. The fixed penalties and the demerit points are set out in the 9th schedule to the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act as amended. So if you commit a violation that carries 2 demerit points or 6 demerit points as the case may be, and you commit it again on a subsequent occasion, you get the demerit points, the same number of demerit points for that subsequent occasion. Sometimes you find if you get to the threshold for disqualification and the licensing authority is considering whether or not to disqualify you, the licensing authority may pay attention to the types of violations you've committed, to the fact that there's a repeat pattern, and all of those things would weigh in the consideration of whether or not to apply the disqualification. So in that sense, you may find that it may weigh heavier because the licensing authority may then decide, I'm noticing that this person has committed the violation of not wearing a seatbelt, and I'm seeing this on 3 separate occasions. I think this warrants, reformation, yeah. Apart from that, there are certain offenses under the Act. So under Section 70, you have things like dangerous driving, driving with alcohol content above the legal limit, and so on. There are provisions for disqualification by courts. Those are not violations. They are still offenses, so they go before the magistrate's court to be heard. And if you are found guilty, the court can, in fact, disqualify you. And there is provision in the law that if you are convicted on a subsequent, a second or further 3rd occasion, that the disqualification can be more severe. Yeah?
Okay, thank you. So we go to the let me go to the TTPS, and just to ask in your response to question 1, page 1 of your response, you identified that the TTPS and all Schedule 8 traffic law enforcement agencies as earlier, main stakeholders of the U-Turn digital traffic enforcement platform. Now, with regards to the enforcement of the U-Turn system between the TTPS and transport officers, also with regards to traffic wardens, with regards to estate constables employed under the Supplemental Police Act. This would include public bodies such as PTSC, Airports Authority. With regards to the entire U-Turn implementation, the question is the training amongst all these stakeholders. Has it been a collaborative effort so far? Or is each entity doing their respective training? Or what is the extent of collaboration in terms of training?
Sure thing, Chair. So the Police Academy, which is the head agency for all law enforcement training as it pertains to policing and law enforcement, we developed what we call the Mobile Enforcement Officers course. And that really is the course that any officer that needs to have access to the U-Turn system must be trained in. So it's a 5-day course that, and it's open to all agencies, not just TTPS. It's all authorized law enforcement agencies in the U-Turn system. So in a class with the Academy or with us at Highway Patrol, we would have with us persons from Transit Police, persons from Airports Authority, officers from municipal, wardens, of course. And the wardens also have their own instructors as well. So we encompass, so there's a set standard across the board where everybody must complete the exam and then goes through a system of authorization through the Traffic Enforcement Center. Once they successfully have been provided evidence that they passed the exam, before they're onboarded onto that system. So it's a unified platform and a unified system of training.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, the primary responsibility for this platform lies with the TTPS, the U-Turn platform?
The training.
Training,
is
but
for us,
the
yeah.
platform itself?
No, the platform, the responsibility is the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Okay, thank you. So coming back to the Ministry of Works and Transport, in terms of the question of the act itself that speaks of this is the appeal process. It refers to a court of competent jurisdiction. I think that has led to some complications. There was actually a matter that came up that went to the Privy Council. Is that still an issue, or has that been resolved? If not, what steps are being taken to have it resolved?
The matter in question is the case of Zachary De Silva against the licensing authority. In June, I believe it was June the 25th of this year, the Privy Council actually gave a judgment in that matter where it held that the Court of Appeal was the proper court for appeals arising out of disqualification by the licensing authority. So that has pretty much settled that particular issue.
Chairman, if I may. Chairman, if I may ask a question.
Please.
Okay, so this is to the TTPS. Being the keeper and enforcer, is asking an open question. Have you found, with respect to repeat offenders, or are you seeing that these penalties are sufficient in deterring drivers from repeat traffic violations on the whole?
Thank you, member, for that question. Yes, we have seen a number of persons that have committed some, what we may consider some serious offenses, such as driving on the shoulder, driving whilst using cell phone, driving without seatbelt. We have prosecuted individuals who have exceeded their limits and have come to the court having been served duly, properly by the licensing authority, where in some instances they have not surrendered their driver's permit, and that's an additional charge. So we are seeing a reduction in the number of persons, the persons who we normally have, and not to say that we select individuals, but we observe that persons are adhering to, especially those serious offenses and repeat offenders. What we had before, there was no real collection of data. We would have to call other officers who may have issued fixed penalty notices before. Do you know this person? Now with the fixed penalty notice system, once that person is flagged, all the offenses are listed in the device that is there. And in some instances, we have been able, through good collaborative work with our stakeholders at the licensing authority, have been able to get those persons to be served with the notice of intention to disqualify, because in some instances, they also change addresses. So it's an excellent way. And I think also in that way, Mr. Batson could inform this honorable panel that we were able to also use information from the U-turn system to actually detain someone for homicide. So probably Mr. Batson could say how they use that as well.
Without going into too much detail on how we do it, but the spin-off effects, because we have real-time information, the system has propelled us to a level of monitoring, as you said, repeat driving offenders. And driver recidivism is really what it's trying to target. When criminals who have that propensity not to obey the law anyway, the small things that they take part in, whether it's not stopping at a stop line or breaching a traffic light, these little flags, they tend to guide investigators in certain directions when they're involved in certain activities. And I want to mention that the main benefit, as ASP Lal mentioned, we are seeing even on the highway patrol side. You all remember the days where once there's traffic, the shoulder would be used almost as a lane by taxis and maxis and PH drivers. Now they bat in their crease because now there's an effective consequence to the breaches. You might lose that driving privilege, and this is a real thing that you can lose. So it really has changed to put law enforcement on the front foot rather than the back foot when it came to changing driver behaviors.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Humphrey, just briefly, to come back to the thing about the Privy Council, what was being discussed before, is the ministry considering any proposed amendment to the Act coming out of it?
I would say that the judgment of the Privy Council has pretty much put the matter to rest, so that it's clear now this is the highest court of the land who's made this pronouncement. So if you have to appeal, you have to go to the Court of Appeal. If it is that the legislature would want to have appeals from disqualification by the licensing authority go to a different court, for instance, the Magistrates Court or the High Court, then you would find that amendment would be necessary. As it stands right now, I would venture to say that an amendment is not necessary in light of the clear ruling of the Privy Council.
Okay, thank you. Coming back to the TTPS, you had indicated in your response to question 1 that there's urgent need to add TTPS ticket payment centers for public convenience. you have indicated there's an urgent need for those. Are you looking at, in addition to the pay ticket centers that you're talking about, the urgent need, have you all looked at alternative payment options as well, such as online payment options, to improve public convenience?
Just to be clear, sir, what we mentioned was the need to, from the police standpoint, because
Yes.
we don't manage the platform as the ministry works, but for the hardship purpose, remember, we want people to pay their fixed penalty notices, and for them to access the pay centers. So, for example, in Miaro, they have the distance they have to cover to go to Grandy and sometimes to pay a traffic ticket. It goes against what's whole purpose of technology to make things easier, you know. So we're just hoping from the police side, we were just using the opportunity here to look into that expansion of those pay centers, and ideally, of course, it would be online, moving towards there.
Now, in terms of the rollout of the whole the system, the U-turn system and everything, you have also indicated in one of your responses is that the utilization of digital social media platforms as primary communication, as the primary communication platform may have marginalized many non-IT savvy drivers, that's the term, who would have been on the receiving end of enforcement without fully understanding the implications of the DPS system, which were received together with their fixed penalty notice. In terms of that categorization you have used there, non-IT savvy drivers, what are some of the thoughts, what are some of the proposals that you all are looking at to promote the full understanding of the DPS system? Because I think this point here is quite a relevant point, because I mean, it's a totally digitized system, and for those who are not IT savvy, and a lot of persons, I mean, we would assume in terms of social media skills and all of those things, but it's an assumption for quite a fair amount of persons. How are we bridging that gap?
Sure, sir. Well, from our standpoint in the TTPS, we go back to a little bit more, I would say, the physical part of doing more outreach. As Ma'am PS mentioned, the distribution of the brochures, a lot of the brochures we use actually donated from the Ministry of Works and Transport as part of our outreach. So as Ma'am mentioned, one of the members there, with regards to sometimes at PTSC or transit points, sometimes at the bus terminus, we found that to be a more effective way, or at the traffic stop itself, where we're doing not just enforcement, but education as well. Methods to distribute that and remind persons on this new system, and where they can access the information to get more information on it. In the divisions, each commander has their own outreach activities, and part of it, one of the topics is road safety. And under road safety, it's not just driving safety, but the U-turn system is its own topic, you know, reminding persons about how the Demerit systems work, how you accumulate it, where you have to pay tickets now. And for example, one of the questions we get is, if I lose my traffic ticket, what do I do? You know, it's not like before. You could actually go to TT Post with your driver's permit, and they will pull up the ticket for you and you pay it immediately. So things like that to let people know it's much more easier and accessible. Just through information is something we have to really improve on sharing with the public.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, if you don't mind, I really want to make a comment on that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think it's a question that bothers me a bit also, because Brent seemed to really be touching on communication and probably also endorsing the method recommended a while ago about using different medium opposed to digital. My concern as Transport Commissioner, I have observed, is really that fraction of the population of drivers who are not computer literate, and how do I monitor certain things apart from just communication? Because we're talking about a system that allows persons to go online using digital environment and see what's the status of my demerit points, see and even monitor my driving behavior. And you should not be faced with a situation that simply another entity will look at your behavior and then say something to you. You must be able to look at that for yourself. Similarly, we have also observed too, there seems to be a lack of information relevant to sometimes persons knowing how to contest that ticket because it's an electronic environment. And I strongly believe though, and we are taking the necessary steps also to send out to the drivers, to the public, what we call how-to literature as to how to contest electronically, also to how to check your driving record. I honestly think there's a need to strengthen that area also, and it's something that the ministry we are looking at this point in time.
That sounds quite positive. Thank you, gentlemen. Members,
Thank you, Chair. Chairman, I'm really happy to hear through you what the Transport Commissioner said, because I do know some enterprising young people who do the visa applications, passport applications. They also assist people with the opportunity to look up their points and all that. But I would really like us to consider, through you, Chair, that, again, I'm going back to the whole public offices. If we have, I could just go in the Ministry of Works, for example, and a little help desk. And I think that could go a long way, especially with our older citizens. But Chairman, the TT Post aspect, I only found out the other day when a relative, we won't call his name, went to pay his fine. And there were a lot of people, because he chose to go on the day pension, checks coming. So that was an interesting experience. So I'm wondering, are we examining other spaces that we can allow this to take place? And I am extremely interested because, again, I noticed that your submission stating nationwide rollout of the self-assisted kiosk payments will begin once the pilot and subsequent launch are currently successful and devices are in place. So I am interested in finding out about that pilot program and what we can do, because I believe, I really truly believe, Madam PS, Transport Commissioner, that people will do the right thing if it is accessible to do the right thing. Because right now I'm studying all the bills I did not pay yet because it's not as accessible as I need it to be. Thank you.
There's a bit of silence on this part, member, because, I think either you were in our meetings a couple of months ago or we just on the same page all the time. The desire of the ministry is eventually, to have as many payment outlets. We have been speaking with TT Post in terms of trying to expand to some of their agencies, and also to go online. The online aspect for not just this activity, but for a number of activities within the Transport Division and the Ministry of Works and Transport as a whole. There is, what I can say is that for every online payment that you try to make, as you would know, there is a background to it that entails a number of agencies, because we have to ensure a number of things, that funds are brought to account properly, that there is proper safety in terms of utilization, etc. And those things are being worked out as we speak, with that intention of eventually for a number of the areas to be going online. That also has an impact on the utilization of the kiosk system, but that pilot is ongoing. The Transport Commissioner will give you a little more detail.
Sure, thank you very much, through the Chair. Chair, I want to say relevant to the payment of fixed penalty tickets. We are mindful that it will be a benefit if we could expand the payee. By that I mean the payee should not just be TT-Post. I mean, we could consider having the payee be the ministry, probably, or the entity, and the law allows for that. And it's something I as Commissioner have been raising discussions with the legal, so we could probably put forward recommendations. So we do hope that will lend some opportunity also. We also are mindful to the fact that under the previous system, if one receives a ticket in Tobago and you live in Trinidad, you have to go back to that court in Tobago to pay that ticket. It's no longer so. You go to almost any TT-Post, but still there is a challenge with that, because as you described a while ago, what is happening on certain days. And as the PS mentioned, we are seeking, as soon as the necessary approvals are in place, to bring the online and so forth platform. Relevant to the chaos, though, the chaos, again, if chaos exists, though, someone could only pay for, I know we are talking about the merit points and fixed penalty, and we need to let the public know the facts. Someone can only pay for a ticket by an approved payee by the minister, according to the Act 9 of 2017. So we cannot say, I cannot give a commitment to the public that you can come to licensing and pay for a ticket on the kiosk. The projection of that kiosk system is really to allow for the opportunity within licensing, so that when persons come into the organization, they may not necessarily need to line up by a cashier. If you do have links and so forth, you can go to that kiosk and pay for that service. Where we are with that initiative, we have piloted that. That system and platform was developed for the ministry free of charge to one of the state agencies, TTIFC. We have tested that the last 2 months. We are currently waiting on chaos that we expect to come in the country. They told us recently by January month, and by that we will be providing the opportunity where we could extend the pilot to the district offices, so that when you come into licensing, you can pay for service via the chaos for a number of different type transactions, like transfers, renewal of permit, almost any transaction within the organization. But I need to say at this juncture, I don't want to give the impression that you could pay for a ticket via the kiosk. That needs certain certain approvals from the minister in accordance with the Act.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Coming back to what we were discussing about the non-IT savvy grouping, are there specific, do you have specific strategic implementation plans for within a time frame for what you were speaking about?
Chair, again, and let me just answer this by just reminding us of the problem definition. The problem definition here is where we have drivers who, for some reason, not aware of that technology they can use, but for that of how they go about contesting a ticket, and as well as how do I go and check my record. I'm of the view, though, I know at this point in time our Honorable Minister has challenged us on the need to continue to educate the public on the U-turn system, and also I am having discussion with the communication department and the ICT department to develop simple documents or literature, as well as opportunities for new media. Dissemination of information relevant to such. I will want to say within the first quarter of next year, we should be seeing more of that within the public domain. It is necessary.
Okay, thank you. Let me come to, well, it was mentioned both by Ministry of Works and Transport in your response, as well as the TTPS. And maybe I'll just briefly read from the TTPS response. This is regarding license plates. In response to question 4, on page 10 of the TTPS response, the statement is made that the ability for persons to manufacture, fabricate, duplicate, and sell vehicle registration plates via sign shops without any form of regulation, reporting, or supervision is unreservedly one of the greatest challenges to the TTPS on the anti-crime front. So it begs certain questions. In terms of the manufacture and sale of vehicle registration plates via sign shops, would you support if adequate regulations and a reporting or supervisory mechanism is put in place? And I know the Ministry of Works would have also, in terms of the license plates, mentioned about the challenges as well with regards to the license, that ability of almost everybody, anyone, to generate license plates without penalty. I'm trying to find Ministry of Works. So while I'm trying to find out, maybe the TTPS could respond.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm given the opportunity because I know the Transport Commission and the team have some great news on the direction this issue is taking right now. But we've had visits from multiple police agencies across the world. I talk about the London Met, I talk about New York, NYPD, and they are in shock and horror when they see people be able to buy a plate at the side of the road, as it's something that, and as you, the public sometimes reads in the papers, you know, they're always saying, well, how come the person got away if we got the number plate? But again, the ability to slap on false plates in this country is ridiculously easy, and it's one of the major areas that takes us some time in the investigation to lead to where the true perpetrators are. Even sometimes renting cars, swapping out plates as it goes. So the ease of which it's done, it's something we're looking forward, and I know that the Transport Commissioner has indicated, and the Minister Sinanan in recent public statements, that it's one of the high priority for the agenda for the ministry. So gladly segue to Commissioner Clark.
Chair, I believe Commissioner Clark wants to segue to me. Because as Commissioner Clark tells me often, policy. That's but Officer Batson is quite correct. The issue of the regulation of the production of number plates is an issue that the ministry has as a high priority. We have very recently submitted a proposal to Cabinet, which was agreed upon, with a recommendation for the introduction of a new system for the production of license plates. That new system will see license plate being undertaken by only by approved suppliers with necessary technology to be able to immediately identify whether or not it is an authorized license plate or not. What we're seeking to do is to standardize the manufacturing process and to ensure that all the number plates meet the required specification for consistency, security, and compliance. Right now, we are finalizing the policy document. We have held consultations on this matter as recent as 1 month ago, and we are finalizing the policy document, which will then lead to the introduction of the necessary legal amendments to bring the system into place.
Okay.
This would be mainly directed to the TTPS. From the readings of your submissions, instead of having to list several questions independently, we've recognized from your submission that you have alluded to the ticketing and printers, some being in need of repair. There was also mention of new machines coming in. There was also mention that it was going to be, machines were going to be replaced or a new order be received by the end of 2024. How are you all dealing with the lack of equipment, or how is the downtime of some equipment affecting the efficacy of going about your process? And is the order on its way, or has it already been procured?
Member, if I may, in terms of the order, we have already received the order. Within the last 2 years, we have purchased approximately just over 300 items. As items become defective, we are replacing them. And if I note between the last 4 years in our submission, we did indicate for the last 4 years there were 289,000 tickets issued using the same said system. And bearing in mind that the main thing that we are trying to do is change behavior. Outside of that, unless we want to see every single officer walking around with a ticket and the numbers increase tremendously, I think the 289 speaks volume to what we have been doing.
Sorry, do you all have an optimal number of units that would be sufficient for your operations? Have you all assessed and said, well, this is our optimal and this is where we are?
At this point, we are trying to make sure that every station and unit is equipped with devices, which we have done. It's just about increasing the total amount of devices they have at this point in time. But no number that we have at this time is the exact amount that we would like to have. But in the next 2 years, I think every year now, we are trying to purchase at least 200 to give the officers so that to cater for the ones that are becoming defective as well as new devices as well.
Okay, but essentially we are talking about, like, from what I gathered from your submission, one device, one printer per station. Is that what operates at this time?
At this time, the majority of divisions have a traffic enforcement area. They have at least 8 to 10 devices to their disposal just for the traffic enforcement sections. Each station has at least 2 devices to utilize for themselves. Each other specialized areas at least have 1 to 2 devices. And when I say specialized areas, those who are not directly on the front line in terms of issuing of tickets.
Chair, if you allow me to say something on that, please. I'm happy that question was raised because the way the system works is that devices can be shared among operators. So you can have, while you may have one printer on a road exercise, that printer can be shared by 2 or 3 users with a handheld device. So you don't need to have a printer for each individual. Similarly, the devices themselves, can be shared by a different officer, meaning he or she can pick that device up and reach out to the community center, to the traffic enforcement center through standard operating procedures and enroll into that device and more or less continue to operate. So we don't see the need, at least I know for licensing, and I hear my colleague also saying the same thing, for one-to-one devices necessary. It could be shared. It was designed that way.
Chair, if I may, ACP, he mentioned a figure there, 289,978, I believe it was the figure of fixed penalty notices given, of which, from your submission, 19,150 were being contested. What kind of time frame we're looking at for this volume of FPNs, fixed penalty notices? Was it from 2020, 19, come forward?
I could give you actually, before I came to the meeting, I got some updated data that I could share with the committee, if I may. So to just show the escalation of enforcement, since the launch of the U-turn device in 2020, we issued 55,570 fixed penalty notices. 2021, that was 91,403. 2022, 95,566. 2023, 107,440. And for 2024 to date, 103,329.
Assistant Superintendent, could you provide that in writing to the committee for us, please?
Yes.
I mean, we'll take note of it, but if you could. Because
I'm a lowly sergeant, but thanks.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm watching the sheet here. I'm seeing
Sure,
assistant. Okay. All right, pardon the promotion. I have to take it back one time. Yeah, if you could provide it in writing, because we were going to ask for a breakdown of the 297, because we noted for the years 2020 to 2024. So how we are presented it broken down by years, if you can submit it in writing.
So we definitely seeing a annual increase as a trending towards that, but at the same time, even facing challenges, copper printers and machinery down, the rollout is still happening and it's still being effective. I wanted to ask the flip side from one of your points in your recommendation, and the flip side of it is, it was stated that the number of matters before the Port of Spain 6 magistrate courts have decreased since the electronic fixed penalty notices system. And has there been any increase in other magistrate courts across the nation?
Thank you, Member. In relation to that question, the number of traffic matters, fixed penalty notice, so it's actually FPN matters. The number of FPN matters throughout the magisterial jurisdictions, jurisdiction of Trinidad and Tobago, have reduced dramatically. And I could give you an instance. There were some instances where a traffic list in Port of Spain on a good day could be up to 100 matters.
Okay.
So we have seen a drastic, like we have some statistics here, and probably we could provide that to the Honorable panel as well, as to how many matters we have. And we actually having more matters heard in trials now with FPNs. The trials are much faster now, and in relation to where persons did not attend court, in the old system, the police officer had to go and find that individual by serving them a summons. With the new system, they are required to attend court, and once the link is sent and there's no representation and the matter is set for trial, there's no adjournment, the matter is heard ex parte. So the court hears the matter from the officer. So that is to show the kind of effectiveness this new system has. And it's actually on a balance of probabilities rather than a beyond reasonable doubt. So we are seeing more and more, not really convictions, but matters where the the police have shown that the person was in fact liable.
Okay. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Rajesh Lal. I think I got it correct this time. As we are on the effectiveness of the DPS system, to the Ministry of Works and Transport, in your response to question 2 on page 19, a table was presented where it shows for 2020, this is regarding number of tickets issued, 55,570. 2021, 91,403. 2022, 95,566. 2023, 107,440 tickets. And well, I think this was up to February of 2024, 15,289. Now, it appears that the number of tickets issued have been increasing steadily over the period of time. We're seeing a growth. Would you attribute this increase in number of tickets issued to the success of the DPS system?
We are both trying to figure out how to say no. We see, well, in the first instance, the thing with statistics is, there are a number of factors behind these statistics. And we note that when we started in 2020, in the first instance, it would have been prime COVID time. And so that would have impacted the figures. The figures are also impacted by a number of other things, such as the amount of exercises that undertaken, etc. What the figures indicate is that, of course, we do have a large number of offenders. Ideally, we would wish that the figures would be non-existent. What the figures show is that we are undertaking exercises, we are carrying out enforcement. We have to go a little deeper into the figures to really see whether or not we are, the system in its holistic term is being successful. I listened to, I want to make sure I don't demote or give a promotion. Assistant Superintendent Lal, and he spoke to the clear ease that has happened in the magistrate's court. And that says that the system is carrying out and is achieving one of its objectives. We have seen figures that support the decrease in road fatalities in certain areas, and that supports the success of the system. We have seen examples and numbers in terms of rehabilitative exercises undertaken by entities that have been brought on board, and that is also a success factor for the system. So Chair, I just want to say that there are a number of factors that will show that the system is working. Yes? We are, and I did say in the beginning that we are more or less in the formative stage of this system, and some people may wonder, it's here for a few years, so why am I saying formative? And I'm saying formative because there are cycles that have to happen for us to understand certain things within the system. So for instance, you heard certain years, 3 years, 2 years, etc. And when you analyze the figures coming out of that, you can only properly do a proper analysis after a certain period in time for different areas. So from a Ministry of Works and Transport perspective, the system is meeting objectives. the system is working. We are constantly trying to analyze the information, because one of the wonderful things about this system that is connected to a number of other pieces is the information and data that you're able to collect to try to do analysis and to constantly tweak it. The whole question of education that you brought up, Member Morris Trillian, is critical, because at the end of the day, what the system is seeking to do is to play its part in terms of changed behavior. And that in itself, some people may suggest, is almost generational, but changed behavior. And we do believe that behavior change is happening. We might want it to happen faster, but it's happening based on what we are seeing.
Through you, Chair. Madam Pias, I note what you said, and I am quite hopeful. I think it's work in progress. However, I would like to state, I have a constituent, for example. He had so many traffic tickets, I think a pardon from the president would have been the only thing to save him. And then with his demerit system, he lost his permit. Of course, that's when they come to us, right? But he's a maxi taxi driver, so he has lost his income. Here's my concern, and it's not so much a concern, but speaking from experience, from my education background. Yes, we can fine. Yes, we can charge. Yes, our lovely police officers can put them in prison. But are we going to do anything about, for example, a traffic school? Because if you hear his history, he learned to drive when he was 10 years old. And as far as he's concerned, he's driving Jesus. And nobody could teach him anything about driving. And there's so many habits to unlearn. And I know that in the States, for example, there's mandatory traffic school in order to get back your permits, to get back your license. Is this something that you all could consider moving forward? Of course, it's always opportunity. And then I also would like to direct a question to Mr. Pigott. I live on a one-way street. And the other night, I saw somebody going up the wrong way, quite happily, but they're not from the area. I know it's a one-way street. I've lived there my entire life. And some lovely police officers met them at the end of the one-way street and gave them some tickets, I would assume. In that particular scenario, Mr. Pigott, when there are no proper street signs or anything that says this is a one-way or no parking, again, I know they can contest it, but what can we do? I go back to saying people will do the right thing if we make it easier for them to do the right thing. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so who is going first?
So, Chair, they normally put me out first, and then you know. I want to thank Chairman, through you, I would like to thank the member for supporting the proposal of the Trinidad and Tobago National Road Safety Council that we start driver's education in schools. I believe that's what I just heard. In terms of, we are part of an overall part of the system is rehabilitation. And as we speak, in the instance where you lose or your driver's permit is suspended, in order to be allowed to reissued, as my legal is saying, you have to go through two things. You have to go through a rehabilitative process, which is like going back to the driver's ed, and then you have to take your tests once again. So there's that aspect of it. We are also, and we have started the process of reviewing the legislation that governs driving schools to ensure that that supports the proper education of the driver, or the driver-to-be, prior to, even before you go to sit the examination. So we have that aspect of it as well that we are doing. In terms of the question, I think I heard in relation to signs, traffic signs, etc. I am hoping that a member of the general public would chip in and indicate the massive amount of work that the traffic management branch has been doing in the recent past.
I think they're excellent. I have no complaints about them whatsoever.
Oh yes, and no, but what I wanted to say is it is a scheduled program that we are undertaking, and if it is that we haven't reached you, we are on the way to you. If we haven't reached you as yet, we are on the way to you. We have increased the infrastructure in terms of our equipment to ensure that we are able to really ensure that the road markings through the whole of the country, and we are not discriminating in terms of what is our road, what is not our road, etc., through the whole of the country, that we do proper signage, because we identify that as a key aspect in the area of road safety. So we have increased in terms of our infrastructure. We have looked at the specifications even for the paint, etc., to ensure that it is right and it is lasting. The Chief Traffic Engineer can speak more to this because he's very passionate about it. So,
but through the chair, just to clarify, Madam P.S., my father was a former Ministry of Works employee. I don't want him turning over in his grave, right? I can say for a fact that traffic management, they do an excellent job. But my concern is, in a scenario like that, for example, where they did not know and there was no signage. And of course, I will ask Mr. Piggott to also mention local government and their aspect in that particular, the signage, etc. But I feel compelled to say that I think that traffic management is doing an excellent job, as well as Ministry of Works.
But we are one.
Yeah, well, I know, it's all under one umbrella, but I think that sometimes the public doesn't understand, and we use this opportunity to explain it to them, because they love to go on social media and talk about the unfairness of the situation. And I want us to make sure that we make it clear to them this is the particular process. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. So with that, Chair, let me just
I think the member wants to bring Mr. Piggott into this meeting. Yes, so please.
Thank you, PS. Traffic Management Branch, we continuously do significant works on all of the roads of Trinidad and Tobago, which is a significant number. In particularly, with your question, with signage and road markings in urbanized areas especially, we have continuous works taking place there. We do have relationships with the enforcement agencies such as the licensing division, traffic wardens, and the TTPS. The usual practice is to not issue tickets if there are inadequacies with the traffic control devices, because it will end up into a challenge in the court. So it's really disturbing a little bit to hear that maybe there are officers who do that practice, because it will only end up in a challenge. When there are situations like that, the TTPS, the enforcement agencies, TTPS, traffic wardens, and licensing division, they right the traffic management branch with issues with respect to traffic control devices in particular areas, and the necessary work orders are done to ensure that we implement so that we don't have that practice taking place anymore. Yes.
Yes, just one more area, and I will ask the TC to go a little more into it, because I think it's important in relation to the rehabilitative and the whole issue that you just brought out, and we do recognize that, because oftentimes we do hear from the general public that there is a livelihood aspect that is happening. And while one may agree that if this is your livelihood, you need to treat it in a certain manner with a certain amount of respect so that we should not reach certain areas, but we do know that things do happen. And in that aspect, we are at present looking at a rehabilitative process prior to you reaching the threshold to lose your license, so that you would have at least one attempt to do rehabilitation before you reach that threshold.
That's Member Arbella.
Madam Permanent Secretary, what is I know the entire field is to change attitudes and to change behaviors. Let's just suppose someone is at 9. They had a rapid increase over a period of time. I see legal smiling a little bit there. And they go through some level of rehabilitation. I'm going to say repatriation, my bad. What are you hoping to achieve then? Is it going to affect the points on record having done so? Is it a chance given to? Does it give them an extension of time? So what is your hope to rehabilitate when they're on the way of losing their license without a pause to recognize, hey, I have lost this right to drive?
You put it very well, Member. It is a pause to understand that I am about to lose my license. I now do a rehabilitative exercise, and there is a reduction. If it is, after that, you come right back up again, there is no, so it's a one-time offer.
This one-time offer is to actually bring the points down as well?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, I think the public viewing or listening would be encouraged by that, because from the information that was presented to one of the questions, the number of notification to drivers who have reached or exceeded the limit of demerit points actually have been steadily increasing, according to the figures you have presented us since it started. So, because in 2020, we had 1,305, 2021, 6,937, 2022, 10,278, and 2023, 14,281. So this was in response to question 9. To your page 23 of your response. So, I mean, the discussions before has been along these lines, but in terms of, really discouraging drivers from reaching or exceeding the limit of demerit points in the context of this, the increase, because it's a significant increase we are seeing over the years, when it started off in 2020 to now. Other than the remedial and the what you had mentioned, Mrs. Yearwood, are there any strategies in mind again for trying to get this number down?
Chair, can I ask a question to add on to that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. The figures have grown from 1,000, which Mr. Chairman said, to over 14,000 now. 14,000. How comfortable everyone here is to state that those drivers are off of the road for the period of time that they're supposed to be off the road for? And how is the processes going for them to receive these warnings going? We understand that they have had some stumbling blocks, people not wanting to accept documentations through TT Post or whatever it may be. How is that part of it going? Because the chairman called out a big figure there, 14,000. At the same time, that is free to go up if people don't behave. But I'm sure there's not a cap on that figure, but the point is it can actually grow. My question to ask onto his is, are those drivers off the road? Do we feel comfortable that they are?
So I start with saying that in terms of the whole issue of the rehabilitative process, as well as the reducing of the numbers, let me start with the rehabilitative process. So there is that measure which I mentioned. We are also looking at the whole issue of warnings, and I believe one of the members did speak to it earlier. But we are looking at it in terms of institutionalizing it on the devices, so that we can actually place into the system that there has been a warning, so that the next time around but you can, for certain offenses, you can provide a warning. There are certain offenses which would be challenging to place a warning on, such as speeding, breaking a red light. There are some things that, may not fall into that category. So it's more or less three-pronged. Continued education, further issues for rehabilitation, as well as this warning system that is being proposed. The other question that the member asks is whether or not we are certain that the numbers are off the road. I start with the numbers again, and I just want to, because it does look like an alarming jump from 1,000 to 10,000, etc. But just to say once again, we started at the same point in time of COVID, unfortunately. So the figures, we must look at the figures in those lights. However, even looking at it like that, we would agree that 14,000 is a high figure. And I want to make that statement, 14,000 is a high figure. And that's something that we as individuals should think about in terms of our driving habits and practices. As to whether or not these people are off the road, or we are confident that they're off the road, no, we are not, because there is a process to bring that about. And we would have indicated within our response that we are having some challenges with the process. Part of the process is that you must serve the person. And that person, the process that we've been using thus far is TT Post. And the delivery is proving to be challenging, because even though the law states that if you change your address, Chair, you should go in and you need to register this at the licensing office. I believe there's a time period. But that is not something necessarily that is happening. And because of that, delivery is proving to be challenging. There are some other areas why delivery is proving to be challenging. So one of the other amendments that we're looking at, and we have made this proposal already, is to be able to change the manner to publication, whereby we would publish in the daily newspapers, and that would be the method of notice. But that is the proposal at this point in time. That's all gazette. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think some of the data you have presented to the committee, actually, you brought up the next area of focus for us would be the serving of notices. And you did respond to question 12 on page 24 of your response, where you stated the number of motorists have increased over the years from 14,988 drivers in 2021 to 23,111 in 2023. This is the number of motorists who cannot be located and had unpaid and uncontested fixed penalty notices. So, yeah, we are seeing a significant increase. I know you didn't mention COVID in 2020, but at the same time, it seems to be a developing situation based on the data that you have presented to the committee. It seems to be a developing problem. And although the annual list is published, I think the response rate based on the information you have given is about 75% persons do not respond. Yeah, so it's about a 25% response rate. So it's something we just tag as a committee because as I said, it jumps out at you and has to be looked at. So it's one of the things we will be looking at in our report to highlight in terms of bringing your attention to it.
Chairman, it would of course be most welcome if your recommendation and our proposal are the same thing.
Yeah, sure. We'll do that.
I could give some further support to the honorable member because I just got information that 2 of the drivers killed were disqualified over the weekend. So they're off the road now. I know that was your question.
With regards to the enforcement of the demerit point system, we started talking about the fixed penalty notices and the serving of the fixed penalty notices and the challenges that are being faced. But in terms of particularly now the red light enforcement and spot speed enforcement, in consideration of camera systems in place for these respective enforcement systems. You have indicated that the ministry is currently in the procurement phases of this project. Would you like to update us on where we are? This is in response to your question 2 on page 27.
Chair, my apologies. Could you just repeat the question so I'm clear?
As to where we are with the camera system for the spot speed
Okay.
and red light enforcement.
At present, we are in the procurement phase for that system. We did submit a tender, and we are currently evaluating that tender at this time. There are parts of the legislation that once we have all the infrastructure in place, will then have to be presented to. In terms of the actual start, we are seeking to make sure that we have a number of areas working at the same time. So that's why we are sort of timing our implementation process. We are looking to ensure that we have it along the same time that we have our the changeover of our license plate system. We want to utilize something called video analytics in that, and we also want to dovetail it with the red light spot speed. But right now, the short answer, we have put out a tender, we are evaluating. There are parts of the legislation we will have to activate once that infrastructure is in place.
And would with the new system, in terms of the cameras, with the ability for automatic number plate recognition, that would be a feature as well?
Chair, the proposed red light system, the device itself will allow for red light enforcement. It will also allow for speed detection as well as for vehicle detection. When I say vehicle detection, not necessarily by number plate only, but by that of type, color, and model. And that brings, that in itself comes with an e-enforcement component that we will ask to factor into that system, which means the new camera system will be able to identify a vehicle by its features, make and model, and therefore provide the opportunity for our sister agencies, police, etc., to now detect vehicles even without a number plate in certain scenarios. By that I mean, therefore, if we are looking for a brown Hilux of a Model X, we can simply input that into the system, and the same cameras will then start searching for that. It's what you call video analytics. The benefit also, to apart from that, with the camera system or the new number plate system the PS was referring to, when accessing the number plates, it will also be able to now tie that number plate number itself and see if that matches within the electronic register to that vehicle. In other words, if the vehicle is TCA 101 and that ought to be in a brown Hilux, and the camera system realize the vehicle data doesn't match, necessary data can be sent out to enforcement agency. And this is one of the benefits I got. I must say, as commissioner, and also too, I must say, with my little ICT background, I'm happy that we took some time to review the red light system because of the change in technology. And when that comes, it will revolutionize enforcement for both police and for other agencies.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Would the red light enforcement and the spot speed enforcement system, is that going to be integrated with the DPS? Is it going to be integrated with that? Yeah.
Chair, no, according to the 9 schedule, if we take the 9 schedule, I think is number 20, subject to correction, we will recognize that that camera offenses via video detection does not carry demerit points. And the DPS refers to demerit points. However, it may carry sanctions and so on, so it will not be integrated with that system. It's an independent system. It doesn't carry a demerit point register.
Okay, thank you. We are almost coming to the close. Coming back to the TTPS, in your response, you indicated the situation with the breathalyzer equipment of the TTPS. And I think you have indicated that currently you are looking at new procurement of equipment regarding breathalyzer. Now we know the breathalyzer is not linked to the DPS system because that is dealt with in the courts of law. But what's the status there?
Sure thing, Chair. Two things. One is the life cycle of the equipment that we would have been procured for DUI enforcement would have been in around 2009, 2010. A lot of the fuel sensors have aged, and the technology behind the breathalyzers has improved. So the new model, which of course costs more, but it's much more user-friendly. The We're just waiting for some information from our, I know fellow Ministry of Works and Transport has submitted certain documents to legal that's necessary for us to procure these instruments. We're waiting some feedback on that. But I know DCP Operations has budgeted for that. I do want to mention, though, sir, that DUI enforcement regards to breathalyzer offenses is linked to the demerit point system, because once the court order goes to the traffic enforcement center, they add the points once the conviction is there.
Could you just repeat that last part you said?
Sure. For example, offense of breath alcohol level exceeding the legal limit of 35 micrograms for a first-time offense carries with it 9 demerit points. Upon conviction, the court order is sent to the traffic enforcement center to apply the points for the conviction.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Okay, so members?
Chair, not really related to the DP demerit point system, but on the whole, there's always and this is to the TTPS, there's always that public perception when it is exercises are being conducted. When you get that reaction from the users of the roads and the traveling public, they say, look at the time these people go and look to do a roadblock. They could have done it at another time, off-peak hours. They grumble heavily. I'm sure you'll face the comments of, why I do wrong? I just drive in my car and they have so much other thing all they could be doing outside there. And then there's the other perception that the police service has a quota to fulfill when it comes to ticketing. And that is something that the wider population always grumbles under their breath, saying that, okay, look at them, they're charging us now because they had to collect some money. What would you say to those comments that are regularly ventilated from the wider population?
All right, if I may, member. I'm also a police officer who would be out on the streets as well, as Mr. Batson. And it doesn't matter what day or time, individuals would ask you, well, why are you doing this? Why do we go and look for real criminals? But that's where the criminals traverse. They traverse on the public roads. And sometimes now there are criminals who are actually using the peak hours, because they realize when we do our roadblocks, our road exercises is sometime off peak hours, middle of the night. So and then they have the WhatsApp group chats. So they are trying to fit in with the law-abiding citizens as well. And it's not like we, in order to move firearms from one point to the other, they must use the roads. So we have to be there checking vehicles, and we are using the Firearms Act as well, where it empowers us to stop any vehicle and search for firearms therein or any person within the vehicle. So we do get that situation. We also do our job, which is to enforce the law. And as the Transport Commissioner mentioned earlier, the law says the officer may issue a fixed penalty notice. And when we look at some of the officers who are out on patrol, they actually issue warnings. A lot of officers issue warnings. So you say, well, my light is blown. I'll give you a warning, because you may not know that your light, but again, sometime after, the same person pops up again, same light is blown. So there are situations where some persons might believe that the police officers are not doing their job, but this is just one part of our duties, and it's to ensure the safety and security of members of the traveling public. And so I think Mr. Batson could elaborate, especially those officers who are out there risking their lives stopping vehicles that have been exceeding the speed limit, to stop them and issue them fixed penalty notices.
Well, I just want to add that for the comfort of everybody, including the chair and the committee, the direction through the lead of the Ministry of Works and Transport and deploying more technology into the roads, that's what's going to make the major difference. Physical policing into the roadways is old school policing. You don't see anybody stopping cars on the I-95 in the US. Everything is camera detections, technology, intelligence-based operations. that's the direction we know we're going forward, and I'm pretty sure that's what's going to make a difference out there. In the interim, well, the hard policing, as you call it, which is with the road stops and the road blocks, that's going to continue to be an active part of road policing operations. And well, as I remind the public when they say, well, why, if we are a revenue-generating arm of the government, if everybody's compliant, we have no revenue to generate. So just support us by doing the right thing. Thanks.
Member, if I may, lastly, let me officially take the time to say the TTPS have no official quota when we are outside there in terms of the enforcement tickets. We have a perspective in terms of maintaining law and order and to ensure safety to the members of the public, and that's our only remit when we're outside. In addition to which, revenue does not come to the TTPS, right? So it's not that we are making money at the end of the day. Everything goes back to the government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Because, you know, there's also the talk that the police officers get bonuses from the ticketed money, right?
If that's the case, please let us know so we can find out where we can make those necessary inquiries.
Okay, so that's one last thing, in that I think one of the major challenges in relation to the administration of the DPS system, what was mentioned by the Ministry of Works is really the effecting of service of notices, which we have discussed a fair amount. But up to the point where people are actually unwilling to sign for registered mail, that has been tagged as an issue. And in such cases, are there any consideration, is there any consideration being given for, I don't know, penalties or whatever it may be to coerce persons into accepting registered mail? Can't you just say, you just don't sign for registered mail? And that's it?
Chair, you know, I think we're all aware that the fact one of the major dagger to the new fixed penalty system is this issue of having to serve notification. And I will say here in any forum, unless we do away with that, we will find ourselves in problems. And triggering mechanisms and systems where a person don't have to sign and so forth, because we have to be able to confirm, according to the legislation, and we operate in the context of what the law is, that John Doe has been served, and he has been served at his registered address, and we need some sort of evidence to do so. And therefore, we, when we liaise with entities like TT Post and so, they may say there is no mailbox with any number, there is no street sign, there is no lamp pole, there is no house number, and therefore we continue to see a challenge there. So we are lobbying hard, the ministry, we have recognized it and know they are putting forward the recommended changes. So soon that will be a thing of the past. But at this juncture, we continue to explore with TT Post what little opportunity or evidence we have to treat with. So I know our PS mandated us recently to continue dialogue with them to see what we could probably bring as an interim measure. And probably we may be able to report on that at some point in time.
But within it all, is there a trigger, at some point, a trigger for law enforcement officers to step in?
Oh yeah, but Chair, and this is what we have been doing time to time. In other words, we at licensing go out and serve relays with the police officers. We do go to communities looking for persons, etc. And time to time we may find them, time to time we may not. But the fact of the matter, though, the figures are so high that it could be a challenge on resources. So we need something that could more address the issue on a macro basis.
Okay. Okay. So thanks, everyone. Before we close, I'd just like to invite closing remarks from Mrs. Yearwood, and then closing remarks afterwards from Assistant Superintendent Lal. So, Mrs. Yearwood, you first.
Chair and members of the committee, once again, thank you for inviting us to speak to the question of the demerit point system. I want to identify that one of the demerit point system is really one of the activities being undertaken in an overall slew of items that is geared towards a safer road network. And I say that in the context of the ministry has been working over the years, and as it relates to the introduction of the breathalyzer, the seatbelt legislation, speed guns, and this is one other aspect, all geared towards a safer road network. And when we read some of the international statistics, as well as even our own statistics, where internationally it's said that 1.15 million people die every year based on road accidents, it really hits home as to the carnage that can happen for a preventable area. The demerit point system is proving, we are of the opinion that it is a necessary system. And as we implement it, we have been reviewing it to make sure that it adequately meets our environment. But we cannot but continue to stress that we all have a responsibility in this area, and that as a country, while we have adopted the safer approach method that is expounded by the WHO and is part of the overall Sustainable Development Goals, we are hoping that as time goes on, we will each as an individual, we will understand the necessity really to seek to obey the laws of the road and to prevent what can be avoidable loss of life, loss of limb, impacts on families, impacts on the economy based on road accidents. So while I know we are here to discuss the demerit point system, I had to make a plug for overall road safety in Trinidad and Tobago. My team thanks you, Chairman and members.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Yearwood. Assistant Superintendent Lal.
Chairman, members, and other persons present, we'd like to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to represent the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in being part of this committee. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will continue to work with our stakeholders, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity of working with Transport Commissioner, Ms. Ramdat, the legal officers, in sharing information and also successful prosecution in the court in relation to disqualification matters, and also in relation to reducing the number of matters in the court now, increase in number of persons being held liable, and we are seeing more and more proper management of court matters. So we at the TTPS have also identified there are some legal issues which needs to be addressed, and we are presently working with our stakeholders. I know some of it was mentioned in the report, and we will continue to work with our stakeholders to determine what is the best way forward. And the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will continue to work with all our stakeholders to ensure a more safer Trinidad and Tobago, especially on the roadways. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent. And let me thank all our representatives who have come here today. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your contributions and for your willingness to answer the questions posed by members of the committee. We deeply appreciate this coming from you all. I'd like to thank our viewing audience, our listening audience, all members of the committee, the Parliament staff, members of the Secretariat to this committee for their unstinting service to the committee, and to wish everyone season's greetings and, peaceful and prosperous 2025. So thanks everyone. I'll suspend the meeting at this time, and I'll ask our members to stay on for our post-hearing discussions. Thank you.